Game 4 of the WNBA finals yesterday by a score of 70-79 or 70-69 against the New York Liberty to secure their second straight WNBA title, their second in franchise history, and they became the first team since the 2001-2002 LA Sparks to repeat as WNBA champions. So monumental win not only for the Aces but also for the WNBA as a whole. And if I want to start just with everything on the court first. So let's just talk about the series as a whole. Vegas jumped out to a 2-0 lead, with both the first two games being in Vegas. They lost Game 3 to Liberty in New York, and in Game 3, Chelsea Gray, the starting point guard, injured her foot, as well as Kia Stokes, their starting center for the Aces, also injured. She had a lower extremity injury. I don't remember the exact injury, but if one of you guys know, you guys can correct me. And both of them were ruled out for Game 4. Those two injuries only mounted on top of their starting center, Candace Parker, who was arguably a top 5 player of all time, also being out since the beginning of August. And we have to remember that this Vegas team was arguably, in my opinion, they were the best team all year. No question about it. Even without Candace Parker, they were by far the best team in WNBA. Though a lot of people had picked the Liberty going into the season to win the WNBA championship. A lot of people have said that the Liberty were the best team ever assembled on paper in WNBA. But if you watch basketball, you knew that wasn't the case, and you knew how much talent and how potent the firepower was in Vegas. The reason that everyone was saying that New York was the best team ever assembled was because they traded for their pieces. They traded for Jonquel Jones. They traded for Breonna Stewart. So you get more headline. You get more. You get more of a splash when you do big name signings as opposed to having your core and your stars develop organically within the system. Not saying one way is better than the other, but that's how media covers it. And so you got players like Ajawilson and Kelsey Plum and Jackie Young, who have been with Vegas their entire careers. So the only player that Vegas signed that wasn't organically developed within their organization was Chelsea Gray, as well as Candace Parker. So this is a Vegas team that, though I do consider them a super team, they were organically developed within the system, within the organization. But that's also why a lot of media pundits didn't want to coin them as a super team, because for whatever reason, super teams are only assembled allegedly if there's a trade involved. But we have to remember that super teams are super teams based on talent, however that talent got there. But going back to Game 4, so Vegas is without Candace Parker, without Kia Stokes, and without Chelsea Gray. Two of their starters. But Kia Stokes have been filling in for Candace Parker since she got hurt. And Vegas goes down by 9. Gets down by double figures actually, at the start of the third quarter. And something we talk about a lot on this show is the concept of having a culture within an organization, at whatever level it may be, whether it be professionally, collegiately, or at the high school level. The most important thing that an organization or a club team can have, more important than athleticism, more important than skilled players, is a strong culture, a strong sense of identity. And what this win, and what Vegas did in Game 4, was a representation of why culture is so important. There was no reason Vegas should have won this game against New York. There was no reason that we shouldn't be watching Game 5 tomorrow night on Friday and seeing New York host or seeing New York win the WNBA championship. There's no reason we shouldn't be seeing that scenario based on the injuries and based on what was meant to happen. But what we saw last night in New York in Game 4 was what happens when you have a strong culture that's led by players that keep other players accountable and that buy into the system. All of these players, Ajawilson, Jackie Young, Kelsey Plum, even down to the bench, players were bought into the culture from day one when Becky Hammond got there. And you're able to see a club, an organization, a team reap the benefits of having their players buy in. And this win was not about talent. It was about culture. But we see what happens, how it's... So when we talk about culture, something we talk about a lot on this show, is that it takes 4 years. It takes 4 years minimum to establish a culture within a program. Specifically at the collegiate level, but at all levels. To truly establish your culture, it takes about 4 years. 1 year to remove all of the players, staff that aren't your players and your staff. The second year to establish the baseline, the foundation of your culture, as well as bringing in your players and your staff. The third year, you set the precedent. Third year, now you keep players accountable for the culture. And then that fourth year, you have players keep other players accountable for the culture. And that's how it starts. That's how it develops. And that is how things move forward in terms of establishing culture. That's the guideline. That's the baseline. And what we're seeing now is, since those players in Vegas with Jackie Young and Ajawilson and Chelsea Gray and Kelsey Plum, since they started their career in Vegas, they're used to the culture. So they've been through those 4+ years. However, in New York, we got players like Brianna Stewart and Jonquil Jones and Courtney Vandersloot who are just joining New York this year. They're still learning the culture, the actual culture of New York. So that's going to take a while to develop. And in a game like Game 4, it doesn't come down to talent. It doesn't come down to schematics, skill, none of that. It comes down to culture. Who has the stronger culture? In a game like that, that's what's going to determine the winner. That's going to be the biggest determining factor, is who has the stronger culture. And we saw that with Vegas. And there was no reason Vegas should have won this game. And that's why this was the biggest win in Las Vegas history. Because of the standards because of what they were up against and the injuries and playing down 13 in the second half, but still finding a way to close out that game. And not only was that the biggest win in Vegas franchise history, but it was also the biggest win in WNBA history because of what it represents as a whole. Something we talked about before the WNBA season started was that super teams are financially beneficial for the WNBA, and they're going to lead to a higher turnout, higher revenue stream for the WNBA. And we were right. We know we had a lot of fans that wrote us and messaged us and said that we were wrong and that it isn't going to change the landscape of the WNBA. But clearly something changed. Something caused that shift. And so something that I always say is, as human beings, we're creatures of consistency. We're creatures of a framework, right? We want consistency subconsciously. And that's why, as human beings, we love seeing dynasties. That's why across all sports, the only exception maybe being college football, but across all sports at all levels, the highest viewer ratings, are when there are dynasties. Think about the NBA with the Golden State Warriors. Think about the New England Patriots with the NFL. Um, think about the Pittsburgh Penguins with the NHL. Think about the Chicago Blackhawks. We are creatures of consistency, which is why we like to tune in to dynasties. Not only that, but also creates another narrative when there's a David that comes to battle the Goliath, that Goliath being the dynasty. So when there's dynasties, you create two things. You create consistency and you create more narrative. And that's what the WNBA did. We know that sports, in its most basic essence, is just entertainment. What's the key thing for good entertainment? A good narrative, a good story. And so that's what dynasties do for the WNBA. Create more revenue, create more viewership, and creates a better narrative, which then leads to even more viewership and turnout. And that's why this win was so huge for the WNBA, because it established a dynasty and then it established another narrative, which is only going to bring in more turnout. It's going to bring in more money for the WNBA. And that's why this win is so huge. So now we go into next season with the storyline of, will we get a rematch of the WNBA finals? What will New York need to do to improve? What will Vegas need to do to maintain? What teams can battle with with Vegas and New York? Can Dallas, move into that top tier? Can Connecticut find a missing piece to contend with these two teams? It creates more narrative, creates more storylines. And that's why this win is the biggest win in WNBA history. So congratulations to Las Vegas Aces for winning the 2023 WNBA championship. But let me know what you guys think in the chat room as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And we're going to take a quick break, guys. But when we come back, we are going to be discussing the James Harden situation.